Hey friends, it's JayRy. Thanks for coming back to the show. This time I have a new guest in the series of The Calling. So, of course, the series here on JayRyWorld, The Calling is about people I know that are exceptional at what they do. And I like to find out a little bit more of why. Why do they do what they do? How'd they get into it? What's interesting about these conversations and what people end up doing for their passions and how do they turn it into a living? So this time I have a long time friend and associate of the show that I've worked on for so many years, Big Boys Neighborhood. This week we've got Sketch. Hello, Sketch.
Jason Ryan, the Malibu Lion. How are you? All
Oh,
the way via LA to Costa Rica.
well, we're just two guys sitting in a kitchen. Can't you,
That's right.
hey,
The wonderful
um,
piece of technology we have here. We're in the same kitchen.
I
Can
picked
I look
this.
at you?
I picked, yeah, hey, right there.
We got to look. Yeah, yeah.
Oops. This is like the Brady Bunch old thing, right? Where they're like
Oh,
trying to
high
hit
five.
the screen. Yeah.
Let
Hit your mark, man.
me see. I gotta hit my.
Nice. Um, so Sketch has worked for so many years on our show, and we've gotten to know each other, professionally and personally, and you recently had me on your show, but let's go back to just letting people know, like, what do you do, Sketch? What is your specialty? What's your number one talent?
Audio production
Yeah.
and creative imaging is my Oppenheimer skill. Everything else in my life is one giant dumpster fire. But when it comes to production, and by meaning production, I mean audio editing and creating radio imaging for, i.e., Big Boys Neighborhood, where it all began, and obviously production in the podcast of my own podcast. And now we're implementing sound effects into your show. So I
Yeah.
would say audio elements.
Right. So that's right. So that's how we got to know each other, is you started doing editing on the show. And then I think what's been so amazing, and again, why you are definitely a good guest to have on The Calling, is because I've literally watched your work progress, over 20 years.
Yeah.
And I mean, sure, it's like, there are a lot of people that are, because of all of the, podcasting and YouTubers and everything else now, there are a gazillion people that, call themselves, editors, producers, things like that. Um, but you have such a really unique talent, and I wonder, um Sketch, like, how, what was the first thing that you touched to, like, start this game of editing?
Yeah, it's a good question, Jay Ry. The first thing that I got into in production wise was in 97 when I began as an intern at Groove Radio. Remember Groove Radio 103.1?
What? Of course
Right?
I
Was
do.
ran by the Swedish Eagle.
In Los Angeles, there was this radio station that just could not keep an identity, and it was located at 103.1, just sandwiched between the legendary Kiss FM
Yep.
102.7 and the legendary, two of
Dairy.
the biggest radio stations in the history of the United States, let alone they're both in Los Angeles.
Right.
Kiss Coast, and then the one in the
Groove
middle is
103.1. Yeah,
the,
which was it was like
the
the
poor
the
stepchild.
the thin layer of mustard on your sandwich. You know what I mean? Just in between everything else. Yeah, it
It
didn't really
had a
have.
it had a mediocre signal. It
Yeah,
never had a chance to compete with the big dog.
right,
But
right. It
there
did
you were.
start my stepping stone into the major market radio with you and with Big. That was like my. That's how it all started. I was like a tadpole in that pond,
But
and
how'd you even hear about, like, the job opening? How did you
oh
even
no. Okay,
go
so
for
that's
it?
that's another good question. Well, okay, it'll lead up back to the first piece of production that I got into at Groove. But at the time when I was 18 years old, I was desperately wanted to get into radio like Big Boy, because Big Boy had just somewhat started at Power at the time, right? In the
Sure.
after or at night, since at that time he was on at night and then he moved to afternoons. Anywho, I was just I want to get into radio. I want to follow like into like Big Boy steps, because Big Boy and I were friends before radio. I was 12 years old when I met him. And when he got into radio, it was like probably like 93, 94 when it really started popping, right? And I was only like, 17, 18. And at the time, my girlfriend was like, well, there's this radio station called Groove Radio in Santa Monica that just started. And I'm sure they're hiring people. You should try to just get your foot in. So I would call the request line and talk to as many DJs as I could, just to get to know them and to understand what the station was about, because I didn't even know what it was really about. I didn't really know what EDM was at that time, electronic dance music, right?
Sure.
It was still new. Daft Punk had just come out. The
Right.
Chemical Brothers had just come out. I mean, this is all brand new. Now it's 1997 at this time. So I finally get in with this guy named Ed, who was on Sunday mornings, and he also hosted the reggae show in the afternoon on Sundays. And I was real into reggae at the time, dance hall, DJing on turntables, reggae parties, reggae music. And he just was like, if you want to come up, I asked him, of course, I was like begging him, can I come up? Can I enter? And he was like, eventually he gave in, he was like, you can come up, but I'm only on from 5 to 10. So I would pop up there like at 6 o'clock in the morning on Sunday and start editing phone calls on reel to reel, the tape reel to reel with the wax and the razor blade.
The archaic system that anybody, in editing production, for maybe more than 20 years would know about. Yeah. Archaic.
I mean, it was, talk about and of course it was carts at the time. We had carts, which were with like 8-track cassette tapes for those younger folks that have no idea what that is.
Exactly.
Carts like a,
yeah, because 8 tracks are so modern, that brought it up.
Right. But I guess the only way to best describe carts,
you could still Google it though. Yeah.
That's what I meant. You can Google like 8-track and then look at carts. But carts, if you type in carts on Google, it's just going to bring up like shopping carts and stuff like that. But yeah, so
cart narcs.
Yes.
7.
Yeah. So I started with Ed on Sunday mornings at Groove Radio, and I would edit his phone calls, and eventually I got a position on the promotions team, and I was doing also mornings with Poor Man because of Ed. Ed also worked on the morning show with Poor Man back when we first started. And I would go up and I made, this is how I started. I made a mix.
Which is wild to me.
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah.
Because that was Poor Man's at least second existence when you are even just starting your own, meaning
right.
Poor Man was already like a legend at K-Rock, and always getting into trouble, from my understanding. You don't get fired for doing a great job, we'll put it that way. So he's out at K-Rock, and then, I mean, big step down, no offense.
Yeah.
To be mornings at Groove.
Right. And he was at Power at one point. Remember that? He did a little stint at Power for a quick second.
Between Poor Man and Tattoo. Oh no, of course I do.
Oh, okay.
Poor Man and Tattoo, like those guys had, I think, like the most like chances in Los Angeles of having 3, 4. And Poor Man was even on with D's, if I remember correctly.
You're right.
It was something.
There was a little short window of that, I'm sure.
Doing bits or something. I think.
Yeah, or on the street stuff, I think, as well.
Maybe.
But yeah, I did a mix for Poor Man's 15 Minutes of Fame, right? And it was like or 5 minutes of fame. I think it was 15 minutes. And I made a 15-minute mix of reggae music. And it was kind of like what we did at Power with the jump off mixes. I did it on computer with a friend who knew how to do all this stuff. I just kind of mixed all the songs together really in rapid fire, like a mega mix. And it played on the air. And eventually Poor Man invited me to kind of just come back up and help with, the show, answer phones, help with guests. And I just kind of got say it again, cook.
No, I said smoke.
Oh, smoke. Yeah. I was smoking weed at that time for sure. He had stopped though by that point. I remember he was like,
really?
He was like, my brain turned green from the weed sketch. Like, I remember he would always say that he gave up weed at that point because he smoked so much.
Wow. Okay. So here I am thinking like you two, enthusiasts were in the same room, but now he's already changed his mind. Okay, got it.
Yeah, I think he had an awakening because he had this gig and he didn't want to squander it. You know, he told me that kind of stuff. He was
That
an
didn't
addict
quite
for a
work
long
out
time.
either, but
Right, it didn't. But you know, the station itself was like this little moment in time where, for me, it captured, like, it was like lightning in a bottle, at least for me, because it opened my whole world up to electronic dance music, breakbeat
yeah,
music,
yeah.
and imaging. Like at the time, Drew, who was I don't remember his last name, but he was like really into snowboarding. He was the imaging director at Groove Radio when it started. But eventually, as the politics and things started to change, and then they let go of Swedish Eagle and it's gone under new management, a lot of changes happened, and Drew just wasn't happy anymore. But I was already doing little imaging pieces. By this time, I was doing for Tony B, and I was working on, back to the production question. Now I went from reel to reel to Shortcut 360. Remember that machine? We still have them, right? We use the instant replay on Big Boy's show more so, but the same company, 360 Systems, invented this thing called the Shortcut, which is essentially a reel-to-reel digitize, and it came out
Correct.
around 97, I believe, and it had
Changed
built-in
changed the world
yeah, it changed everything.
at the
It
time.
it changed my whole world. At the time, I just wanted to be a power mixer. I wanted to be on Groove Radio DJing on turntables like a superstar DJ. That's when superstar DJs were starting to become a thing. Armand Van Helden, Tiesto is still huge, but he was kind of just becoming huge back then,
Mhm.
on a massive scale. And I remember once the Shortcut 360 came out, and it had all these like sound effects in it, like we played the applause earlier, or like this is a sound effect here. Oh, hold on, my drive has to boot back up because it goes
Oh,
into idle. But for example, it had sound effects built into the Shortcut 360. Here, watch this little slap.
oh, there it is.
Yeah. Sorry, I did. That wasn't the edited version, but like it had all these sound effects built in, and you can edit phone calls. And so with Tony B, I was interning for Tony B, and I would edit phone calls, but then I would mix in little stupid, like, you remember those like kung fu movies that were dubbed with English over it? It's all people like this just don't deserve to live, right? And I would take a clip of that, mix it with like a phone call of like a caller going Groove Radio, and to maybe put a sound effect, a shink as we refer to them, right? And I started making
What is this shink that you refer
the
to?
shink is let's
What are
see.
what are you speaking of?
Here, let's go to a shink real quick. I'm going to show you a
This is
shink.
this is a Sketch O Matic and JayRyWorld when we
Yeah,
speak with each other.
this is an inside joke when we refer to
Put
shink.
another shink in that before you send it back to me.
That's a shink. Yeah, or how about this shink right here? This is a feedback verb.
Right.
That's it. That's what's
So
known as radio imaging sound effects, right?
right. So
In other words, shinks.
when Sketch is making his little masterpieces of promos or phone taps or whatever they may be,
Yeah.
yeah, there could be how many. I mean, if you let's just say it's a 60-second promo, which no one makes anymore because now they're deemed to be too long.
Right.
Let's just
Right.
pretend we're talking about 1 minute of content. What
Right.
would you say would be the amount of elements you would have in a 60-second promo? So if we're doing a 60-second commercial saying, hey, listen to Real 92.3 because we're giving away Disneyland tickets every morning at 7:10.
Right.
In 60 seconds, how many different, like if we're looking at your literally multi-track.
The Pro Tools tracks, I would say about 8 to 10 tracks.
Yeah.
And sound effects wise, it'd probably be about a minute long. I'd probably go about either 10 like different little shinks, like little wipes, and then also filtering Big Boy's voice or
Right.
the announcer's voice. Join Real 92.3 with Big Boy, hello, and then you hear Big Boy say hello, but it's filtered, so it sounds like he's on the phone, sort of. That's also considered sound effects because you're tweaking the vocals. So, and it takes anywhere from about 40 minutes to an hour, maybe 2 hours to make one 30-second promo. A 60-second promo would take about the same amount of time, but maybe a little longer. But I would say nowadays a 30-second promo about a couple hours, if you really want to make it bang, where it's like all these tracks are playing, not just vocals and shinks and sound effects, but you're also changing up the beats, the beat. It goes from like a Drake beat to a Dr. Dre beat back into you know, Lil Uzi Vert or whatever. And then it goes back. Like you want to keep changing it and you're only playing like little snippets. The way I produce, it's like I have ADD. Yeah.
I agree with all of those assessments.
Yeah.
When you're at Groove Radio,
Mm.
and you know, I'm sure Groove Radio, I mean, because I worked, you know, from the bottom up as well.
Right. Started at the
But
bottom.
now we here.
Yeah. Hit the Drake ref.
Now here we are in this fancy kitchen with, you know, with pastel mugs. But so you're at Groove, and again, not a glorious apparatus there. You're not getting rich there. How does it go from, you know, this passion of like you're loving it, you're learning like on the job there, and then when is like that next thing that is like the next moment when it's getting bigger?
Okay, well, that's a two-part answer right there. The first part is I actually made it on air at Groove Radio. Once like Swedish Eagle got a dose of what I can do on production, because he didn't really like me at first. I'm just going to say that. We didn't really see eye to eye. I was very ambitious back then, not like the version of the older Sketch you see before you. I'm sure you could even agree with that, JayRy. You know what I mean? Like there was a different version of myself when I was in my younger O Matic years.
There is that, but what I was also going to say is that, you know, I mean, that's something that we have in common to this day, that there are people that don't agree with us, but that doesn't mean that we're wrong.
Right, exactly.
And also, like, to be perfectly honest, like, you know, I prefer people that speak up and are bulls and are ambitious, because in the end, even if some plates get broken, the better work is likely going to come from those type of people.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at you look at some of the people that I've interviewed in this series. That's certainly true, but it's also true with people that like I've chosen to work with, you know, on you know, professionally and on other projects, you know, as well. So it's like I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that especially in the beginning, like I knew from a very young age that like I had a different language going through my head.
Yeah.
And not everybody got it, and not everyone liked it, and not everyone liked my presentation. And like I said, people to this day still don't like my presentation.
Same.
Oh, well.
I mean, me either. People just don't like my face. I just have that face that is very like unsettling to people. I think they just immediately like, huh, you know. You have like a George Clooney type of calmness to you that I just don't have, JayRy. You're very calm.
Sometimes I know I have a decent inkling on the politics of things. I have a decent inkling on when to play my card.
And you have a master's as well, right? You have a bachelor's. You went to university. You graduated college. You did all that.
But that doesn't. That's all good. That's all good, but that doesn't really teach you like how to like manage people and things like that, you know. But this is about you.
No, I hear you,
Mr. Nava.
Okay. Yes, thank you,
Mr. Nava.
But yeah, so to go
tell
back
us about the on air at Groove Radio.
Yes. Oh yeah, yeah. Who is that? Is that Keith Morrison?
It's
no,
either
but
that or the guy from The Matrix.
Oh yeah, Mr. Anderson. That's Agent Smith, JayRy Smith. But yeah, Eagle got a dose of what I was able to do at Groove Radio, and he realized that there's a talent there, and he decided to use me more in imaging, and then he decided to have me host an on air for Armand Van Helden show, which aired on Saturday nights, and he was pre-recorded on DAT. Remember DAT tapes, and he would send in his mix, and I would hope. Yeah, Google it. DAT kids. They were really cool in theory, but they'd always get jacked up in the players. Remember that? It was the worst. But he'd send in the mix, and it was a good mix every time. Some way out EDM stuff, and I would just host it. But I also had the opportunity to make the intro, the legal ID intro for the show, the in and out of stop set sweeps, right? Which meaning it's just like a promo or a quick like, Armand Van Helden on Groove Radio 103.1. Shink to commercial, and then shink out of commercial back into the mix with me hosting. I was live. He was pre-recorded, but it seemed like he was live. Phone lines were always ringing off the hook. Then Eagle gets let go, unfortunately, and the station goes through massive changes. They keep me. They fire Drew, the imaging guy, who wasn't happy there anyway, and they gave me his job. So now I'm not only hosting the Armand Van Helden show, but now that there's new management, they put me on the morning show. Like I was 19 years old hosting a morning show in Los Angeles. Granted, it wasn't on the greatest frequency of a station, but I was the youngest on-air host in LA in like a long time.
The big
and I remember,
deal.
Yeah, my program director, Mano Hennessy, shout out to Mano Hennessy. She told me, she was like, Sketch, don't say how old you are on the air, because you sound like you're older. But if people find out that I put a 19-year-old kid on the air, I'm going to get in trouble. And so she just would say, just don't say your age, because you sound like you're 20 something years old already. And I looked it. I had this goatee even back then. But then I got put into imaging because Drew left. And that really catapulted me into the imaging realm, because by this point, I'm into Eric Edwards, who was the voice of Power 106 at the time. I believe he still is. He was also the imaging director. And John Frost, who was the imaging director and voice of K-Rock for years.
Legends.
And those guys were my idols. I just was like, I want to be like these guys. I would copy the way they imaged for Groove. I would try to copy. I mean, I sucked at that time. But I would try to implement the telephone filter that Eric Edwards would use, or John Frost, wacky, like talking over himself, where he's the same voice, but he's also the voice of the character. And he's like, what, excuse me, what? It's like this real fast stop and go type of imaging pace that I could never get down. Nobody can do it except John Frost. But me, it was like my way of proving what I could do. Yeah.
But of course, that's what happens, right? If you stay in a career for a long period of time and you're good at it, you're constantly watching and absorbing what other people did right. I mean, that's just common sense, right? Like of having the taste of saying like, oh, I like the way this is done. I like the way that's done. And then forging, your own, right?
It's, I think, how artists do it. Artists, like, they copy somebody else and then they get their own. They find your voice. Eventually you find your voice. But I did quite a number of years of trying to be like John Frost or trying to be like Eric Edwards. And it wasn't until much later that I learned, like, you don't have to be like either of them. But it took me a while to get there, because to me, that was the standard of imaging. If you want to be in LA on an imaging director status, you have to be like them. And in a sense, that's kind of true, but especially back then in the late 90s or like 97 going into 2000, that for me was the standard. But nowadays, I don't know if that really even holds up anymore, because Eric Chase, another imaging guru that I look up to, he told me, he was like, Sketch, you don't have to be like John Frost. You have a unique style. Just do you. Just do you. But it took him telling me that numerous times. Even Big Boy and yourself, they were like, stop trying to be so frosty. Just do you. You don't have to be so fast and cutting it like you're in an Olympics, like you're Olympic editing. Just do it how you would refer to it, JayRy, full circle imaging, full circle production. We get everything, every dose. It doesn't have to be in this style. And that also taught me, just find your own voice, like do it the way, and by my own voice, I mean, find my own voice and editing style.
Sure. Of course. I mean, your own individual talent for that. I mean, of course. That's one of the tricks actually of like having this conversation with you, is that you and I have spoken in an unrecorded manner.
Right. Yeah.
For hundreds of hours already.
Hundreds.
I mean,
you're my family, JayRy. You're so like one of my dads.
Yeah. So the thing, I'm not old enough to be your dad.
No, that's right. But I mean, I look up to you.
Then
like
don't
that.
You remember your own advice just a second ago? Don't tell your age.
Oh, my bad. Well, listen.
Stick to your own advice.
You look amazing, JayRy, but you and Big have been very much like my big brothers, and I would say even father figures in discipline and consistency.
Yes.
That's what I meant.
All good. And what I was getting at too is like I'm really like thinking about like my conversation with you, because I know that like we could just talk on our own tube and nobody would know what the hell we're talking about. So I'm trying to make sure we're like really
Right.
explaining the storylines here because we know what the hell we're talking about. But
Right.
oh,
Well,
look at
so I think a lot of radio people understand it too.
the coffee machine and stuff.
Oh, you got it. Is that the one espresso or what?
This is your kitchen. You tell me what it
Oh,
is. I don't know. So you and I met at Power 106,
yep.
and even Power 106 when we met um, was a legend of a station,
Oh, yeah.
and yet it also was still like a baby in the sense that it was owned by a tiny company that struck it big on having the two biggest hip hop stations at the time for New York and Hot 97 and Los Angeles with Power 106. But when you would go to those studios or that radio station on the eighth floor in Burbank, it was nothing to write home about.
Right.
It was not the best equipment, and no offense to Tom Koza, and I mean, radio didn't have
Right.
budgets and
Well,
things.
this is the 90s. It was 90s type of equipment,
It was, and
Pacific boards.
it was
Right.
before like the AM, FM, and the Clear Channel, and everybody came
Right.
in and like glamorized radio again.
Right. Yep.
But in the moment when we met, like, tell me your experience when, so Big Boy and I are, I was new to producing his morning show. He had been on for about 2.5 years at Power 106, kicked
Right.
ass in the ratings at night and afternoons,
Dominated.
dominated, gets to
Yeah.
mornings. He had a very unique style. There was a lot of music in the show and singing and,
Yeah. Yeah.
great relations with artists. And so it was like, he really did something different,
Totally.
broke through instantly. Then they move him to mornings because, of course, it's like, oh, their best show's got to go on in the morning in Los Angeles. Like that's the way it always is, right?
Yep.
They put him in mornings, but they weren't quite ready. Like they didn't have
Right.
a plan on how to make a morning show. It was just like, okay, we see a hit, put it over here. And then they hired a couple of, quote unquote morning show producers, and
Right.
he blew through two of them in 6 months. Then I came in the door. He hired me. You can hear my story elsewhere of
Yeah.
how,
You could hear it on my podcast. Yeah.
yeah, you can hear my story about that somewhere else. Uh, but when I came in, I knew we needed to upgrade our talent. We needed to upgrade our structure. We didn't have a fucking structure. So how about
That
that?
was keyword structure for sure.
So tell me about your now enter Sketch into the big boy zone professionally because
Okay.
you already knew him
Mhm.
personally. So talk about coming into Power 106 with Big Boy and I.
Yeah. So it's 1998. And I remember I took a vacation from Groove Radio and I was miserable at this point. I just wasn't, it wasn't the same anymore. So I really wanted, my whole goal was to get to Power, by the way. That was the whole reason why I even went into Groove Radio was to one day work with Big Boy. That opportunity came knocking in 1998 and I was taking a vacation. I remember that night I got home and that next week I was going to start a vacation. So the timing, when they talk about impeccable timing, this is
Okay.
the universe like lined up for me.
Absolutely.
I
Yep.
get home and there's a message on my, at the time, answering machine from Big Boy.
Google
Okay.
it.
Yeah, Google it. And I immediately called him back. I mean, I couldn't dial faster, right? And Big's
Sure.
on the phone and he's like, and at the time, like, I was Sketch already, but I believe he called me like Chris. He's like, hey, Chris, what they got you doing over there at Groove Radio? Right. And I was like, well, I'm doing this.
I love the pseudo impression.
Right. That's my impression of Big. That's what he, hey, Chris, what they got you doing over at Groove? Well, I'm doing production stuff. Right, right. Hey, Speedy K put me on game with like they're not really kind of doing you right over there.
We're
Is
gonna
that
we're gonna put a little visual cue. Go ahead.
right, right. Hold on. I
Go
gotta
ahead.
pull up a hello, by the way. I gotta
Yeah,
pull up a hello while you're doing it.
let's
Let's
get the
see.
impression going again.
Hello.
Yeah, here we go. One more time with the hello.
Hello.
So he's like, yeah, what do they got you doing? I heard you're not that doing that great over there, or meaning like you weren't happy. Speedy K says that they got you overworked. I said, yeah. He goes, hey, let's just say he calls me Sketch. Hey, Sketch, I'm prepared to offer you a position. And when he said that, I thought I was going to like pass out. Like I felt like, or I was going to wake up at any moment. My stomach dropped. And I said, okay, well, what do you want me to do? And I remember vividly, him going, you know how Big will go, hold up. And he put me on hold. And this is three-way calling. He called you, right? Yeah. And your voicemail picked up, or your answering machine, I don't remember. But he called you and he was like, hey, yeah, I got Sketch. I'm going to bring him up tomorrow. He was kind of like virtually introducing me just so you knew who I was. Yeah. And you had just started, but that phone call eventually.
It was before we had the bat line installed.
Right. And I remember he said the next day, he goes, can you be at the station tomorrow at 6 a.m.? Mm-hmm. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And I showed up. I don't even know if it was 6 a.m. off the top. I think my first introduction was probably around 9 a.m. Mm-hmm. But eventually, in that week that I took off from Groove Radio, I went to go work at / audition for you and Big. And I remember I was there.
It happens.
Yeah, it was really kind of like a heist. And that actually happened two times, as Big Boy would say, 2 times in my life, right? In my radio career, where I pulled off like a double agent. Because in radio, if you work at a station and you go to another station to do shit, that was like treason. Okay. Right. Especially in the 90s, radio was like war. Nowadays, of course, obviously it's different. But yeah, so that was my first.
It was war in 2015 when one company was foolish enough to let the #1 hip hop talent in the world lapse in his contract so that he could go across the street. That was also
hello.
Yeah. Exactly. But anyway.
Yeah. Tell me about it. That was one of the most epic fails in radio history that literally sent shockwaves through the radio realm from coast to coast. People actually were able to benefit from that change in a lot of ways. And not saying that they couldn't have excelled on their own, but you got to think, because Big Boy leaving Power to go to iHeart, that opened up all kinds of avenues of work that people really dominated from because of Big leaving. Yeah. And, I feel like credit it needs to be due there, because I mean, it's weird. He's not even doing anything, and yet people are given jobs because of Big. That's how much power, I guess, all pun intended, he has,
Well, I mean, we're getting a little off track, but
sorry about that.
I mean, no, it's okay. There's no script to this, but it's true that, once you get going and you create, like a great product, a great show, a great anything, that people are I mean, of course, jobs follow, because like, even just, I mean, we're going to get back to you starting at Power, but like, you look today, like, it's not a radio show anymore. It's a radio show. It's a TV show. It's a YouTube. It's 4 YouTube channels now.
It's a podcast. 4. Yeah, 4. Almost by the end of this session will be 5 TV shows.
It just keeps exploding. And so it's like, I mean, it does create a lot of jobs. And also, like, he's a big fucking deal.
Yeah, he's a franchise. He's a franchise. Big Boy is a franchise now.
Right. So you get to Power. And then you and I meet, you start. I mean, of course, there's a million details that I'm skipping over here, but you start. We have very humble studios. We don't really even have our own space to work after the show yet, because they didn't think that was necessary.
Right.
Morning show office at the time,
studio,
fucking bunk beds and a liquor cabinet in it. Like, it didn't even have production equipment. And I'm like, what the fuck kind of place is this?
I remember Big was like, hey man, we're here to work, not sleep. Remember he'd say that? It was like, even though you guys were cool with me sometimes falling asleep in the back studio because it was early in the morning and it might be a lull in production, like I didn't really have anything because we didn't record anything yet. Big would even say, it's okay, Sketch, we don't have a problem with you falling asleep back there. But I felt so guilty for that. Like, I felt like you have to be awake with the rest of the crew. But yeah, that morning show studio that we started in was like much like a bedroom in a way, even without the beds in it, because he's right. JayRy's right. There was technically bunk beds in there from the prior morning show before Big Boy took over. And then once Big took over, that room went through multiple changes. It had the digital sound editor called the DSC 9000, which only had 8 tracks. I went from Groove Radio to working on that, which was different because it was like a bigger version of the Shortcut 360. It had a jog wheel, but it was a little archaic. And then eventually that got updated to the Orban Odyssey, which that was like an entirely editing bay, an entirely a self-contained editing bay. Brand new, cost $17,000, by the way. Now, I mean, you look at it now, it's like Pro Tools, laptops. I mean, you almost have the ability to edit on your phone. You can't even see
You look at it now, and if there's any sitting around, they're holding a door open for ventilation.
Yeah, exactly. It's wild how much technology has leaped and bounds,
It's
right?
like when you watch old movies, you know, from like the 70s or 80s, and they show like an IT department, and they're like, I mean,
how did we get anything?
Couldn't do anything.
How did we get anything done, JayRy, with that? But we did, and that was the wild thing, is the equipment that we worked on. So, like as you stated, humble beginnings. Like as the phone tap started, I remember you were the one that told Big, we can put these crank phone calls on the air.
Yeah,
like that was your call, right? He had already done them. Not saying that you invented phone taps, but
he was just doing it for fun. I mean, I created the
segment,
the demand for it. If you
exactly, yes,
and of course, it's Big's talent is second to none. But the thing that I think is like such an important point here, you know, is that people, if I fully believe, easy to say because of like how my path has gone, right? But also, you know, you and I have similarities here. And so if you put product first and you put quality first, even if you have a failure here and there, you're still doing it right. So, I mean, you know, like our industry and lots of industries are always accused of cutting corners and, oh God, they just let go a bunch of people. And, you know, they never like celebrate when a company adds 5 jobs, but you know, when they get too bloated and they cut 15 jobs, everybody loses their mind and says radio's going out of business and this and that.
It's dying,
but
right?
It's never been true.
Right, I know. It's not going anywhere.
But I think that it's again like what are the brands that, you know, succeed? What is the, you know, like how is it that some things really last and some things don't? And so this is where, you know, again, like you get to Power, you're working with Big and I, you're still working with Big and I, and we're talking 25, you know, years now since 1998, whatever. We probably came in towards the end of 98, I'm guessing.
Right.
Like, you know, like you, you know, you have this, you know, style and this talent that is exceptional. And so I want to hear from you, like just sort of a like just give me some of the time of like working on Big Boy's Neighborhood, about like your favorite projects that you've worked on or things that you were like really were excited or proud about.
I'll tell you, I mean, obviously the phone taps were at the top of the list for sure. And to sit in that room with you and Big, and we'd write him notes, you know, to say things that we thought might be funny, and then he would take it. And
so let's talk about that really. Let's
go ahead.
Second, phone tap. It's the #1 feature on Big Boy's show.
Still, by the way,
Still the #1 features. People still love it. And so the premise is that you call an unsuspecting person, and you know, pull some nonsense on them. Right?
Yeah.
Big is very good, and he's so quick, and he's so smart on how he figures out how to like get people engaged or get people upset on these calls.
Right.
Now, not to knock anybody, I'm not going to mention any names, but bigs are real, big calls.
Yeah.
And it's really fucking impossible nowadays to get people to answer their phone, which is why we do rely a bit on the library of like the classics, you know,
for sure.
perhaps than we should, but it is difficult to get people to answer their phone.
Oh
Now,
yeah.
they're real, but they're not done live. So it's like
Right.
we would do them in the, you know, production studio. And
Mhm.
then this is where you're picking up the story here, talking
Right.
about, you know, like writing a note. What does that mean?
So, for example, when Big would be calling like the remember the veterinarian veteran. So
Sure.
he'd call like
Right.
a veterinarian clinic for animals,
Right.
but he called as a retired vet who was having PTSD, which back then we didn't even have that phrase, I don't believe yet.
Right.
And he was like going on about war and there's bombs to the left of me, bombs to the right of me, and he'd go on. And then the people on the phone, they felt sympathy for him. They felt bad. Sir, this is a veterinarian. This is where we take care of dogs and cats. And he's like, I saw a couple of dogs over there in Vietnam, and that whole thing. So as he's talking, we would grab, I'd grab the dry erase board and write down like, say something like, my dog is still over there in Vietnam or whatever.
Right.
And, his name is Benji or whatever. And we'd hold up the sign.
Right.
My dog's still and the Big would pause and kind of look at it. And either sometimes he'd go, like, I'm not,
right.
What do you
So
mean?
yeah, he would write. It's like,
right.
it's like we would be yeah, like live writers on
Yeah.
occasion of like just, you know, an extra joke or something. It's
Right.
like he always would come up with like I would say 98% of the time he would come up with the premise.
Right.
And of course he's the performer. Occasionally,
Yeah.
of course, there's co-stars,
Right.
including yourself.
Yeah, you too as well. Of course, you're on a lot of them nowadays for sure.
I mean, I'm kind of the same person in a lot of them, you know.
Yeah, but it's the best though, because you play, like I said on my podcast, you play the law enforcement role so good. Like you sound, even right now, you sound like you could be in law enforcement or some sort, because your delivery is so like there's like you're not sure if you're serious or if you're just joking, just like Big. Like you guys are hard to read, both of you, and you balance each other out so well because
Well,
you come from
we're our own COVID with each other. We've caught each other's things
you rubbed off on each
over
other
25
personalities.
years.
Yeah, man, you guys are definitely, you have a certain type of bromance chemistry that your unique relationship is different from my relationship with Big. Everybody's relationship with Big is unique in its own way, like a fingerprint. Everybody's relationship with Big is totally unique. Just to go back to the note thing, I remember vividly writing a note. He was talking about, this is back at Power. He was doing a phone tap. We're all in the room, you, me, and I don't know if Liz was there yet, but I remember he was doing a phone tap about going up to the skiing on the slopes, but he had never done it before.
Right.
And he kind of wasn't sure what to say next. The lady was like, well, you just need to do this. It kind of was going into like a lull. And I wrote him a note and said, I hope I don't shit in my pants up there. And I held it up to him, and Big read it and didn't start. You know, when Big laughs at something, he'll go, right? Like he did that. And I felt so good about that. I was like, oh my God, he's laughing at one of my jokes, which really was just
you wrote a hit.
It's just a poop humor joke. I hope, and he goes, I hope I don't shit my pants up there. And then the lady was like, oh, sir, don't worry. You're going to be like, she felt so bad for him.
One of the things about it, and I know Big would say it if he was sitting here in this kitchen with us, but like it's still like a family of friends, meaning that like he still looks around to see if he's even making his own friends laugh in the room, let alone the audience, whatever the audience may be, of all the different places the show goes now, you know, between you know, radio and podcasting, YouTube and all that, you know, but that's a real thing. Like even for that, like you gotta like a reaction yourself of pride of like, oh my God, I wrote something that he liked and it even made him laugh, right? And it's like I get that too. And like I still watch Big's eyes watching me sometimes. See my reaction, you know, even in the live show. And so that's a real thing. Like I totally get that.
Yeah, dude. When you make Big laugh, when he laughs, it's infectious. Like
Yeah,
the
yeah,
way
yeah.
he really gets going, where he's like crying, laughing, which I'm not saying it's rare, but it's hard to get him to really laugh like
He's not
hysterical.
he's right.
Yeah,
He's
yeah,
not an easy laugh. He doesn't just like
right,
give it for nothing.
right. Me, I'm
Um,
amused by everything. I'm always laughing most of the time of any little thing. Like even your isms that you do. Let's see if I got some here.
Again
Again, right?
and again.
I
You did it.
You just did it.
we
Unacceptable.
we've said that, or I should say, I've said that at least 6 times already in this episode. So some
It's you. It's so you.
some words are deeply embedded. So you loved working on phone taps. You still work
Yes,
on phone taps
I do.
on the show to this day. We're filming this in spring of 2024. But um, what else? Like what else are things that, like again, your calling has been creating this sketch world of soundgasms, of like just like you have your own way of doing things.
Thank
Phone
you.
tap, we did also invent Phone Tap Plus,
Oh, yes.
um,
That was your idea.
which but it had to be executed, and so that's you.
Yeah.
But Phone Tap Plus is a way where even some of like people's favorite phone taps that may be classics
Mm,
can still find a way to go back in and add a little sound effect to like spice it up, a little bit, or modernize it a little bit,
right.
which is super clever. And again, takes somebody who really knows their shit, like that's one of the things that I respect. It's like, yeah, we have lots of years together,
Mm,
lots of success and hits and lots of, pieces you've created. And
yeah.
but it also, I feel like it kind of is, for those who are familiar with the concept of, outliers in that book, I believe it was Malcolm Gladwell that wrote that book, I think. And it just talks about like the expertise of doing something for 10,000 hours, so
Right.
once you like really are like great at your craft, that's probably about how much time you've spent doing it.
For
And
sure.
and so I feel like nowadays, even though we have different stresses of the company and financials, or the ratings this month, or like
Yeah.
I don't know if you feel this same way, but like I don't feel the pressure that we felt at the beginning, because I feel like you're
Yeah.
much more of a pro
Yeah.
than you were in the
Yeah.
beginning, right? Like I like the questions now, I don't
Mm,
think would be about your work.
mm.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes. I know what you're
Like
saying.
the boss wouldn't be standing over you. I wouldn't be standing over you for the parts that I direct with you. And
Right.
like, why would you put that in there? What is this? What did you
Right.
like? I mean, just because we're past that. Like, there's like
Right.
there's like you are so good at what you do, that like you even proactively, if I say we're gonna have Offset on tomorrow, so I need a new bumper that says backstage, Big Boys backstage with Offset. Send that off.
Yep.
You'll send me 3 or 4 different versions
Yeah.
just on the knowledge that, well, let's see what he's in the mood for, right?
Right.
And
Options.
knowing that I'm gonna like one of them. I mean, it's
Right. One of them.
extremely rare that something gets sent back, but like,
Right.
how do you
It's yeah.
how does something, I don't know if you even pay attention to that, but like, how does something like that make you feel in
Mhm.
today's value of that
I
work?
hear what you're saying. Well, this goes on to the 10,000 hours aspect of it, right? I actually Googled how many hours I've been, or I think at the time I had just gotten Alexa, and I asked her how many hours is 20, I said 25 years, right? And it was like 250,000 something hours.
Yeah.
So that's essentially how much experience I've had. Now, at the beginning in 98, when I first got on with you and Big at Power with the phone taps, I was terrified of editing the phone taps by myself,
Of course.
because there was always this worry of like, why did you take that part out? Why didn't you put that part back in? Oh my God, you forgot to bleep that one curse word, Sketch. And that's actually happened before, right?
Of course.
But like, because you guys were so patient and
there was no foundation of respect yet.
Right, exactly. Or the
Yeah.
trust wasn't fully there yet, nor the experience. It's just Big. I was also very much like a little brother to Big, and I still am. But like he was putting his trust in me, but he didn't know exactly what my skill level was exactly. I didn't know. You didn't know. We just knew I can do it. I can edit and make things sound good. Like I did a couple of the bits at the beginning. I remember we did like South Central Park because South Park had just kind of started at the time, and I came up with South Central Park, and it was like a 3-minute bit. I mean, it went on forever, right? But it well, go ahead.
It was a 5+ minute bit to start.
The director's cut.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And it wasn't the greatest, but I mean, Big liked it because it was the concept of it. It wasn't the greatest at all. But like, I remember speeding up my voice and doing like, you know, it's Big Boy's Neighborhood, like Cartman. I try to do the Cartman impression. And it was fun. I did like Kenny talking through the thing. And it came out okay, but it was our first dose of like all of ours, including mine, my first dose of what I am capable of doing.
Right.
And I remember Rick Cummings heard it at the time, and he was like, that's great. Like, it's not great as far as the execution, but the idea is there. Keep going. And you, Big, and even Rick at the time, none of you ever stepped on my toes going, why did you put that sound effect there? Why didn't you use this? You always gave me that freedom, free reign to do what I wanted. And if you didn't like something, you'd come back and tell me, let's change this. It's this doesn't sound right. But that was rare. It was very rare. So yeah, go ahead.
I agree with that. And I would also say, like, you know, it was also the Wild West when we started. Like, you know, we could get away with a lot more. So it's like we were in a way, like we were like kids in the locker room sometimes of like
absolutely
like covering our faces of like, oh my God, are we really saying that? You know, and
yeah.
It was wilder like in the beginning. Now, I mean, times have changed, generations have changed, tastes have changed probably 5 times now. We've gone through waves of, you know, changes.
Can I bring it back real quick just to touch on a little bit more of the feeling that you had asked me about? How do I feel now as opposed to then? Because of the hours and experience and, you know, learning the hard way, meaning, you know what I mean? And for the people watching, like I dealt with a lot of substance abuse, but in doing that, I mean, I've been to the depths of hell with alcohol and substances and shit, and still was able to deliver my work, right? But it didn't start out like that. Like at the beginning, I was just terrified of editing something wrong and disappointing everybody. But then as I got older and I was partying and I was going to DJ with other DJs at clubs, there was a lot of free party favors that would come my way. And eventually, I think I got a little cocky, to be honest with you. Not saying that I could, I felt like I was better than everybody else, but I felt like, oh, I can do this. I can get high and party and still go to work. And that was a bad decision, every time.
Yeah.
But at the same time, because I put myself through that self-induced hell, because it was all my decision. It's not like anybody was forcing me. You guys were concerned about me, but I was able to learn from those mistakes. And now I feel the feeling now, to go back to the question, is so confident in what I do here because I'm sober-ish. I mean, I still smoke weed, drink coffee. Those are drugs, but they don't alter my state of consciousness. They don't make me feel like I always have to be reaching for another drink. That combined with my sobriety from those things, from the party favors, the alcohol, combined with the crystal clear thinking of what I need to do now and how to get it done and how to make you guys proud of me is like the greatest feeling that I get now. Like whenever I get an email back from you, Jay, when you put like great, approved, and usually you'll say something about the LA songs, which you play on Fridays, our Friday LA song that I make 3 different versions of.
Yeah.
Come back, and then whenever I get that positive, like, oh, I like it, like, oh, that's really good. Oh, I like how you changed that one part. It means like it's almost like getting like an iHeartRadio Music Award to me, or even if Big doesn't really communicate like you and I do because he's busy. We don't really see each other. I communicate with you more over GroupMe and text and whatnot. But every now and again, I'll get like a message from Big and go, hey, Sketch, did you edit that one thing? I'm like, yeah. Hey man, that shit was fucking dope. Like, and
Yeah.
he'll give me a hug and a pound if I see him in person. If not, sometimes he'll just call me or he'll text me and go, yo, the Gardena Nissan spot sounded so good, Sketch. And he'll capitalize so good. Again, it's like,
Right.
I can't believe this is me of all the people in the world. I'm
Right.
that guy. I'm here with you now. And it's still surreal to me. Every time I swipe that key card at iHeart or even back at Power and I punch in my code and I was able to go to work with you guys, hungover or not, I was always like, I am so lucky to be here. So that's the
And
feeling.
uh, and I love that. I love hearing that. It just makes me feel terrible now that I don't write any of my own emails, and that's just an assistant that wrote those things to you. You thought it was me. I feel
Ladies and gentlemen,
so awkward now.
ladies and gentlemen, the
Guys,
comedy stylings of Jason Ryan, the
just say
Malibu
something
line.
nice to him. I'm too busy.
It's an auto reply, an AI reply. Oh my
J
God.
Rye AI.
Yeah. AI, JayRyWorld. Let's see. I got to bring up a drum roll real quick here.
Okay.
Let's see if I can find a drum roll for you.
So
It's coming in late. Oh, wait, that's the wrong one.
yes, it is.
Sorry. Go ahead.
This,
Oh, it's called a rim shot. My
if
bad.
ever,
Go ahead.
if ever this was don't use this as an audition to get another job. I'll tell you that because we're a little delayed.
Go
But
ahead.
Sketch, I know that having you on the calling episode is a good move because again, like I know that you are so good at what you do and I think that um if anybody is even still listening or watching this and if anyone's ever grasping like any takeaways, like I feel that none of us um, speaking right now, we didn't have it mapped out. We didn't have it perfectly planned. We didn't have it, but you know what? It's like making one good decision after another of like being the best that you can at your work, realizing maybe, you've gone too far with substances or emotions or how we're talking to people or like whatever. You just keep making one more deposit after another, after another, after another. And then here we are, two guys talking 25 years later with like all of this experience and accolades, and the show's won every fucking award. And your production is a part of that. Big's talent, of course, is like the number one thing of it, but it's like the production matters.
Yeah.
Like the management behind the scenes matters. The satellite talent that's on the show with him as well matters. It's like it it's just something that, I think that we still to this day, hire new people or are watching, for that next person with such and such a talent, right? I mean, a lot of it's gone more like, editing and digigital and things like that. Now, like our back end department is bigger than our on-air department. Like
I know. It's a whole wing of people. It really is.
That's just where it's gone, which is such a blessing because like, I mean, my God, I couldn't imagine living my life if I was still making what I was making the first day I walked in the door there. And if the job had stayed in that tiny bubble.
Right.
It's grown and grown and grown.
I remember you at Power. I remember you would explain like how things were at KISS when Rick Dees was on before Ryan Seacrest took over, how you were like, Rick Dees has a whole wing on the side of on the building where dedicated to his show. And this is when it was just like 5 of us on the morning show. Now Big Boy's Neighborhood is like, I think there's like 30 people that work, right?
I think we still have a smaller wing than Rick Dees, but I really don't appreciate you bringing that up. That really upsets me. Very upset.
Well, I feel like we do have quite a small army of people working behind the scenes at iHeart. Even people like me, I work from home, and then other people work from other places that work for Big as well on his team, not necessarily for the show, but just to go back to the whole, it's a team of people that make Big Boy's Neighborhood work on and off the air, including on the internet, podcasts, the TV shows on YouTube and et cetera. And then, of course, the Hollywood Walk of Fame star that Big Boy got. What was it, in 2021? Was that when he got it?
Google it.
I forget. Yeah, I forget exactly what. Yeah, it was. I remember it was kind of
right after the
COVID.
pandemic.
Yeah,
it was on his birthday, so I think that was 21.
Yeah, I think it was. I think
it was 20. We were still in the pandemic.
Yeah,
right.
And it was on his birthday, and it was a big deal, man. It was a big deal, and again, it made me feel it was wild to see Big on TV, and in person, reading that list of people that made Big Boy's Neighborhood possible, and then he gets to my name, he gets to Marco, Barba, Johnny, like everybody, people that aren't even with the show anymore, but he still gave that. He attributed all these names out of respect because he knows how much work it takes to make it what it is now. Right. And that's huge. That's just like massive respect, because it was a long list.
It was a long list, and I would venture to guess that some people's names he mentioned haven't even heard it themselves at this point.
Ooh, yeah.
No, I'm just saying. I mean, they not everybody was there because it was a very limited thing because of pandemic. Like we couldn't even have all the show members there. They had to go by on the TMZ bus and yell.
I was on that bus with Natalia.
See? Yeah. because we couldn't, because it was limited. Yeah. Everybody saw try to stay away from each other. Yeah. So we've got all of these things as to like how, we've, gotten to this point. And again, I know that this is your calling.
Me too.
But I will ask you this. Your fingers stop working. Your mind cannot make a promo anymore starting tonight. What do you do tomorrow?
Ooh, that's
what else you got up your sleeve that you might maybe be interested in?
I mean, to be honest, I've always wanted to try to act, but
really,
just because I got this funny face and I feel like I could play a certain type of look, even if it's not talking. Like I've done a lot of extra work in between my radio career when I wasn't at Power and I left for a while and came back. But in between, I remember venturing into the background extra central casting. I right now currently live across the street from Warner Brothers.
Right.
And every day I'm always like, man, I'd like to just try. And even if it wasn't acting, but to do something behind the scenes, like in production, but that would require making promos or some sort of production element. So let's say none of that existed, then definitely some sort of acting or, I mean, this is going to sound crazy, is just taking care of dogs because I like dogs so much and I don't have any kids. Yes. I don't have a family. I don't have a wife or a girlfriend. That's kind of by design. I've been in a lot of terrible, toxic relationships that were also very beautiful, but in a lot of ways, it brought me down from this version of myself that's right now on this show with you. Like I can get into a very dark funk and if I couldn't do radio imaging or production anymore and I had to choose something else, I probably would want to work with dogs of some sort in some capacity. I don't know what capacity, but I just like being around animals like them, like dogs that really appreciate a human companionship. And I'm a huge dog lover and I know you are as well. And it's like, I like that. I like that appreciation, that unconditional love that animals can give you without ever saying a word.
That's true.
Yeah,
it's true. And then the dogs don't get emotional and go crazy on you when they turn 15 or so,
Right. Or they don't get embarrassed to be seen with you, what is that? I mean, that age 12, 13, man, it's brutal, bro. I remember doing that to my mom. Well, I remember doing that. Yeah, it was fucked up.
It's in the DNA. We've all been the joys and the shits to our families in one way or another, right?
And I will say that I think it's because of those experiences in my life. And this goes back to you and Big and losing my mom in 2017 and the substance abuse and all that. Like after I was able to shake all that shit off and put into perspective, like my mom passing and obviously mourning her loss, but it really like made me appreciate what I have, like, and that's my relationship with you, with Big. If I didn't know Big, I don't know what I'd be doing. I think that's even more of a bigger question is like, to go back to the production, if you couldn't do if I didn't know Big Boy, if I never met Big, like none of this would have ever happened. I don't think it would have ever happened for me, to be honest. I'm not saying that I couldn't have done it without him. Right. I'm just saying he was such a key component in creating Sketch O Matic. Like, if it wasn't for him just being at that Veterans Park Culver City dance when I was in 7th grade, when he was MC Big Boy, he wasn't even on Power yet. He wasn't the bodyguard for the rap group The Far Side. Google it.
Right.
Far Side spelled with Phar, by the way.
Cide.
Yes. And all that, it's like all those things, it's like that really created me. Now, I was into hip hop before I met Big, but Big made hip hop so mysterious and magical. And I feel like that, though, everything that I struggled in through my life with, like that I already explained, but to get through that hurricane of the stages in my life that were really toxic and unhealthy for me, and to still have Big have my back and on my side, and you as well, is like, it's like winning the lottery, like every day. And that's the thing I think that a lot of people don't quite understand about my relationship with, not just with radio, but with you guys. It's like, it's when you lose your parents, when you lose a parent, like my dad took off when I was 16, but I'm pretty sure he's deceased now. But like, and then you realize you got your sisters, and I have my brothers, you and Big Boy. And that, and also in many ways, like father figures, because of the discipline and the consistency. And that is such a big role model for me. And I always gravitated towards male role models because of my father leaving when I was like 16 or something like that. I immediately gravitated to Big. And then as I got older, I'm 46 years old now, and I still look up to people that are you and other people that are not that much older than me. Right. But I look up to you in father figure ways because of the discipline that you guys have stayed on. And that is hard to accomplish because I didn't have any self-control. Like, I was the worst, man. And I look back in such cringe moments, and I'm like,
I'm aware. God.
Yeah, of course. It's fucking awful. It's embarrassing, Yeah.
Well,
anyway.
I have about 7 comments to what you just said. But first of all, you can tell that you've gone from an editor to being a podcaster, because now you're rewriting the question yourself too.
Oh, sorry.
So that was great. It was fantastic. It's a compliment.
Thank you.
But also, it's another takeaway of what I was saying earlier, which is that you just keep building the right deposits over time. Like, there could have been times where you could have been out from the show and it could have been the end, but it's not. And so, you do have the support of, Big and I when it makes sense, which is most of the time. If you do something that you're out on the ledge by yourself, well, we can't we can't put our own credibility on the line, completely. But you have earned, that trust with your incredible talent and your consistency, over all the years. So that is definitely true. And you are loved, and you're fucking amazing. And I appreciate you being on the show. I just have one last thought before we say goodbye.
And then can I add one more thought about the phone taps? And I
need to just. Well, you start your thought, and hold on.
Okay.
I'm going to get ready for my thought. Hold on.
Okay, are you putting on a little lip balm right there? I like it.
I'm very chapped today.
You're very chappy today, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm parched.
So the phone tap thing, I was going to say, just as far as the phone tap plus. So when you reintroduce like recurring phone taps, but you were like, Sketch, I want you to touch them up a little bit in any way. Meaning, when you said that, we were going to edit them down a little bit because some of them were a little too long.
Yeah.
But at that time, I just really got into Howard Stern. And we've had this conversation before.
Right.
And that's another role model that everybody in radio that knows of Howard Stern knows what he's contributed to this thing of ours, right?
Right.
And if it wasn't for him, a lot of the way that we do radio and podcasting now wouldn't exist. But let's not forget about the phony phone calls, which are his version of phone taps, his crank phone calls.
Right.
And his production team, the way they edit their phony phone calls gave me the inspiration to really capitalize on the Phone Tap Plus scenario when you brought that into play. And that, I think that took my production to the next level, was because of Howard Stern. And I think it's interesting that, again, if that inspiration wasn't around, would the phone taps have become what they are? And, I've never met Howard. I don't know anybody from his show, but I listen to them religiously, and I take notes, mental notes. How can I do what they're doing production wise and apply it to Big Boy, but in our own way, so that I'm not just fully copying what they're doing? And that's something that really took our phone
we
taps.
We wouldn't be airing phone taps if you copied exactly the way. Because I think that they're kind of low rent, to be honest.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, and again, I think a lot of people, if they hear the word Howard Stern, it's like an instant, pass fail, right?
Right.
Because a lot of people just think of like the original version of Howard Stern, like,
shock jock.
It's too salacious, and
it's
about naked women or stupid stuff, right?
I'm talking about the nowadays phony phone
but he matured, and he turned into something. I mean, even if you didn't, there are shows that, I mean, I couldn't stand Dr. Laura. However, I learned things for my own craft by listening to her show. I learned from Dees. I learned from Dr. Laura, Tom Likas, Howard Stern, I've learned stuff from all up and down the dial that have nothing to do or wouldn't make sense, to try and create how all the synapses, fire to make our ideas. But you're right. I mean, there's always, another level of inspiration if we are bright enough to let it in and know what to extract based on the project that might be in front of us. So
well said.
Yeah, no,
that's exactly why you're the executive producer, JayRy. Just that delivery on that is very executive lingo. I know. I don't know how you do it, man.
It's just, again, if you get the right seed and you water it right, man, you'll make a fucking oak tree that will last 100 years. I mean, it just really is that.
Yeah.
And it's it's also, it's the gratitude for me, and I know you've expressed this as well too, of just the gratitude of having the opportunity to do something that, we really love and we've grown into over time to be really good at, because, there's most people in this world will never get to do what they want to do. And
I know.
I have absolute gratitude. I know you do as well. Thanks for being here today, brother.
Yeah, man. Did you want to close out with your last thought, or was that it right there?
I think we're at a great point. We can have an episode 2 someday. But
thank you for having me on, JayRy. I really appreciate it, man. That was very kind of you. I was excited to be on, and I'm gonna give myself and you a little big boy applause. Yeah, there you go. Not bad. I like the guy at the end right here. Just the guy at the end. Listen, right here. He goes, yeah, at the end.
As only an editor would point out.
I love that. I'm such a nerd like that, JayRy. But thank you so much, man.
It's JayRy. It's JayRyWorld. This is another episode of The Calling. It's been a while, but it was worth bringing back for this special episode with Sketch O Matic. Look him up. He's fucking talented as shit, man. So thanks for
check out the podcast if you can.
And check out the podcast. We're cross-promoting here.
Yeah, a little style like that.
Sketch, I've said everything that I need to say, but I think for old time's sake, you should end the show like you used to do on the air. How do we end the show when Sketch would make these on a daily basis, like the nut that you are?
I gotta find my
your megaphone.
Where is the megaphone at?
So for those who are absolute fanatics of the show, you remember, if you could last till 10 a.m. and you weren't at work or school, Sketch would come on live most times and end the show like a director, sort of like me almost, of
Right.
like verbally ending the show
Yep.
and this.
Okay, give me a second. I got to get my prop.
Oh, you're gonna go. Oh, well.
Yeah, I'm gonna come right back though. It's right there. I just got to
Okay,
reach
that's
over
all
for
right.
it.
No worries. One would think that he would have had all the pots right here in the kitchen, but that's okay.
I'm actually in my kitchen right now, as a matter of fact. Yeah.
Here
This
we go.
is as good as it's gonna get right here because I don't have the actual thing anymore. Okay.
All right. Thanks for being here, everybody, on the Calling JayRyWorld on Instagram, on YouTube. Thank you so much, everyone.
And then the big boy sounder would play underneath, which would be like it was like a rumble, and then you hear, "Okay, folks, that's a wrap. Let's get Big Boy's chair rolled out of here, ladies and gentlemen. And no, JayRy's got to go. He's got to go dye his hair again. So let's not compliment that the roots are showing. And that's a wrap, everybody. Goodbye." Or something like that. It was something along those lines. I can't remember, but yeah. And then it would go. You would hear Big Boy.
Big Boy has left the building.
And that was Double E. That was Eric Edwards' voice. Yeah.
Yes.
Good times. I hope
it still is Eric Edwards' voice.
I actually redid that myself. Did you know that?
Well, we had to when we moved,
yeah,
because it was now a competing station. But so.
Yeah. Right. But man, thank you, JayRy. That was fun, and it's great to see you again. I miss you. I miss you here in the States, man. But when you come back,
I'm there. I'm in your kitchen now. What are you talking about?
I know. Let's see how we're gonna go.
Right. No, I went the wrong way again. Anyway, love you, brother. Thanks, everybody.
Love you.
Watching. We'll see you next time. Bye.